Welcome, everybody. Today we have here with us Scott Blossom, who has had a clinical practice for almost 20 years as a general practitioner of Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. He created and taught the yoga and Ayurveda curriculum at Kripalu for 10 years as well. And he's got a great current project right now called Desk Yogi, which is focused on people who work at desks at a sedentary job, and he has been working with some exciting clients and companies, including Patagonia, where he delivers online content that really help these people make choices that matter for mind and bodily health while at work. So his project includes both yoga and Ayurveda, and you can find more about this project on his website, www.drblossom.com. Thank you so much, Scott, for interviewing with us today and talking with us. We're excited to hear more about the work that you're doing.
Thanks so much, John. Great to be here.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about that project and its scope and what's happening?
Sure. Yeah. The project is, at this point, we're just getting into our second year, and so we've got a number of companies that we're already working with, and we have about 200 short-length videos that are everything from yoga and tai chi, qigong, to self-massage, acupressure, breathing, mindfulness, somatic therapy, strength training. It's kind of a menu where you allow people who are desk workers or work in places where they are sedentary most of the time to just pick what they're interested in doing, and they're all like bite-sized, 3 to 7 minutes long or so they can actually do it on a break. And there's lots of little nuances to the way that it has built-in ways to help people curate a whole bunch of content that's related to what they're interested in, know they need, as well as ways to help them identify what they need to do to be healthier at work. And so, this year we're gonna expand the content quite a bit and start focusing a whole piece on digestion and food at work, because we kind of in the first year just wanted to get out something that was body-based, because that is the most critical thing for somebody who's sedentary, is to get them moving. And now it's moving into some other areas, including things like Ayurvedic content and specifically food and digestion-oriented content.
Yeah, that's a fantastic strategy there to work with the body and then digestive and food for people who are working at a sedentary job, because a lot of the problems with diet and food come because they are not moving. And so another thing that's just fascinating about this project, so many people come to Ayurveda and Chinese medicine seeking general wellness or addressing a specific condition. And so many practitioners can help folks on a broad range of projects. But whenever we find a practitioner who, like Scott Blossom, who has really gone deep into a particular area and can understand all the nuances and come up with very specific, knowledgeable suggestions in a particular area, that's so powerful, and that has allowed him to draw even on some other traditions, Chinese medicine, and Tai Chi, as he mentioned, yoga, so that he can really bring together a total and comprehensive solution. And so it's always exciting to hear about this specific work being done in alternative medicine for everyone's benefit. So can you give us a little bit of maybe just a brief introduction? How does sitting in front of a computer affect a person's health?
Well, now, the kind of meme that's out there is that sitting is the new smoking.
Nice.
Because there's so much overwhelming research about just a cascade of negatives. And partially, from my perspective, I'm always looking through the lens of prana. I'm always looking through the lens of circulation as a very basic orientation, in the way that prana is enkindling the digestive fire and supporting the capacity for digestion. And so prana as a factor of circulation translates into really the whole lymphatic health of the body. And that is not only limited to the musculoskeletal system, it's also going to include the entire GI tract, because the way the lymph system surrounds and motivates that system is very significant. And so as soon as that starts to be inhibited, and any kind of long sitting is going to do that, because the lymphatic system is really encouraged through primarily movement, physical movement, and breathing. And emotional changes will have an influence on it too, that are very significant. But the two primaries are movement and breathing, and you just drop into these suboptimal patterns of movement, posture, and breathing when you're sitting at a desk. And so from my basic perspective, the insight is just that people's lymphatic systems are suffering. And then you get into this, you get into a pro-inflammatory state because of the lymphatic system not circulating. So then, and that really is the root cause of what we would call in Ayurveda, Kavaigunya. It's like wherever the weak spot in the person is, everybody's going to have different ways they feel that stress and the way that they compensate or respond to that stress. But fundamentally, I think that it has to do with their prana stops circulating, their digestive fire starts stagnating, and oftentimes what they're going to get is an increase in vata and pitta. And then, of course, the digestive fire, when it's weakened, you'll always get the third stooge, which is Kafa. So it's a hot mess very quickly for people.
Okay, so you said some interesting things here from an Ayurvedic point of view. And also, you mentioned this word prana a few times. Now, there may be folks on the call who are new to this concept of prana, which is such an important concept to grasp. Can you speak for just a moment? What is prana, and how is it related to the lymphatic system?
Sure. So prana as a term means something, there's Sanskrit terms always have multiple meanings. And so I was just teaching with Dr. Robert Svoboda, who's a very, significant Ayurvedic writer, thinker person in the world. And we like to think of prana in a few different ways, but primarily that its quality is motion. And so in the same way that the human body has all of its fluid dynamics as its basic gross level functionings, which includes things like blood circulation, but also includes all the other fluids, such as lymph, interstitial fluids that circulate constantly to keep the body healthy. At another level, you also have the movement of the nervous system, all of those electromagnetic motions in the system that contribute to sensation, which contribute to thought, which contribute to feeling, and really again kind of the gross physical basis for a lot of very subtle level functioning that people have. And so prana underlies everything that's in motion. It's a concept that encompasses the fact that life has a dynamic quality and that death has a static quality. And so that's really the basic definition that we work off. But then I think it's also important to draw it out into something a little more multidimensional, to say that the term pra that starts that word prana is actually cognate with the English word pervasive. So it means the breath that's everywhere. It's like the matrix of life. And so in this way, Dr. Svoboda likes to describe it as it's the thread of breath that strings mind and body and spirit together like pearls on a thread. So it also is this thing that pervades our experience and gives us a sense of connectivity, gives us a sense of our body being one body. And when we have stagnation of that circulation of our in our bodies, it's also the thing that makes we become aware when it breaks down, because we start feeling more disintegrated. We start feeling, what is kind of the pervasive feeling of everything working together starts getting disrupted as well. So I think that's an important way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, prana being this, the feeling of prana perhaps being freshness, vitality, and the feeling of death, or lack of prana is a kind of stagnancy, maybe even depression, or just a sense of feeling ill at ease, or lack of life, a lack of pep, and
Yeah.
and perhaps if you remember this in the biblical story of Genesis, God fashioned Adam and then he breathed life into them, right? And so you can have a lifeless body, right? The material that the primordial man is made of is just that, it's material. It's when we have that spark of life in the material, in the body, then Adam comes alive, and so if we can help people who are sitting and stagnant at work, if we can increase their prana, we're going to increase their sense of feeling alive, their sense of feeling vital, their sense of feeling fresh, and that's what I hear that you're offering people, is that freshness again.
Yeah.
Now you said something which is surprising. You said it in just a few brief seconds here. You said that this inflammatory state starts when a person is stagnant, which is a vata and pitta imbalance, and then of course it leads to a kapha imbalance. So let me unpack that just a little bit for our audience, because what this means is that it's this state of vata hyperactivity, perhaps, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong there, and this state of pitta inflammation that's causing people to get overweight. Now, everyone knows right now that if you sit at a desk job for too long, you have this tendency to gain weight and have a sluggish metabolism.
Right.
Not that a person's too hyperactive and inflamed, and that's the real problem, right? So in a way, you really challenge people in that 3 seconds there. You challenge them to accept a different worldview, that it's not just that sitting at work causes weight gain. There's this intermediate step that perhaps is even more important than just how much calories you're eating. Can you talk about that a little bit more so that people can understand that pathogenesis or how the development of that of weight gain or kapha kind of condition might develop from vata hyperactivity and pitta inflammation?
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that is to me. It's thanks for teasing that out.
Yeah.
The way I would start with that is again to say that the body its fundamental functioning is as a fluid dynamic system, because even the digestive fire, as we call it, it expresses itself as digestive juices. There's no open flames in the body. So everything is going to be in a liquid, water matrix, because we're mostly water. Mm-hmm. And so the water itself, metaphorically, is the substance, and then the motivating force that keeps it circulating, which, in biological terms, is going to be the pumping of the lungs and the movement of the diaphragm, the movement of the body, the movement of the heart, all these things that really keep actually pumping and motivating the system at a gross physical level. Mm-hmm. What's being motivated primarily and foremost are fluids of different kinds. And so whether it's interstitial fluids or lymphatic fluids or digestive juices or blood, everything is getting pumped. So the vata imbalance is really, by definition, a time when that circulation is interrupted or distorted in some way. Mm-hmm. And so then you get, for example, in a work environment, and I think you really, I think it's a very important point to make, is that people are often very nervous. They're often anxious. They're often under a lot of stress. They're often under the perception that they can get more done than they actually can. So they're feeling like they're constantly not getting done what they need to get done. So there's this kind of urgency. And all of those things have this revving effect on the nervous system and a revving effect on the adrenal system. So and then, then people are augmenting that with caffeine and sugary stuff. And so one of my teachers, a Buddhist teacher I have, she says that, most people are basically are in a caffeinated functionality, which is why if they go to sit and meditate, they immediately fall asleep. They'll find themselves getting drowsy and they can't. It's like it's not an actual state of clarity because it lacks this basic quality of relaxation. And so people are highly overstimulated, they're highly stressed a lot of times, and then simultaneously they're sitting still. And they might be moving their hands or something. So it's like at one level there's incredible speed and activity, usually at the nervous, mental, emotional level through the kind of organic systems. And then simultaneously, physically at the musculoskeletal level and the breathing level, often things are depressed. So this is kind of at some level a disintegrating influence on their physiological homeostasis, which is another way of saying their physiological balance, their physical health. So at some level, that is the way that the Vata imbalance works. And then it's just something that's come out in the research not, too recently, that for me was like a huge aha, which is that much in the same way that fire is either cooled or put out by water, inflammation is balanced by the lymphatic fluid circulation. And when lymphatic circulation is inhibited, inflammation is a result. And it can be very, mild inflammation that you don't even notice. And so if you're taking, healthy breaks, if you're, moving your body and moving your breath in a kind of regular way, you're constantly actually reducing those very basic inflammations that come from lymphatic distortions or blockages. And so the pitta arises as an inflammation that at the physical level actually seems to have a very direct correlation to lymphatic flow through the whole system. So if the lymph fluids flow like water, they put out the fire. But if they're not flowing, they're sitting there stagnating. And this term Kafa, represents the water principle fundamentally in the body. And so you have water sort of pooling, sitting around, becoming stagnant in the body, metaphorically, but simultaneously it's not actually checking the inflammation that arises whenever there is a stagnation of fluid dynamics.
Yeah, great. You've said a lot in about 5 minutes there, Scott, and you hit on some key points. The first is that a person is in this incredible state of stress and tension and anxiety, which is overstimulating the nervous system, and at the same time they're sitting still. So it's like their physical body is doing the opposite of what their mental body is doing, which creates this huge contradiction. And we all know what this feels like. This feels like at the end of the day when you're completely exhausted and you can't think straight anymore. Your brain feels tired, and at the same time, you know that you've got to move, right? You know that that you've got to somehow, get your circulation up and reinfuse life, reinfuse prana, move all those fluids to resolve that contradiction. So there's the vata that Scott was talking about earlier. Not just the stress, but this weird contradiction of stress while sitting still.
Right.
And then Scott talked a bit about the lymphatic system and movement and the effect that has on fluids and inflammation. So it's breathing and movement that move fluids, as you mentioned, and this is probably surprising to listeners, because if you put out a glass of hot tea on the counter, the hot tea is going to get cold.
Yes.
And we think of movement as causing a person to get cold. In fact, people sitting at work probably oftentimes need a space heater just to keep warm. And so they're thinking, oh, I'm really cold right now. But Scott is telling us that no, you're hot, right? It doesn't mean that you should throw this space heater in the garbage. But the fact is that sitting pools of water in the body create heat. Why? Why does this happen? Our cells are metabolizing and doing their cellular functions, whatever cells do in order to keep us alive. Liver cells do what liver cells do. Muscle cells do what muscle cells do. And while these cells are alive, they're producing waste products. And these waste products have to be flushed out of the tissues. We've got to get fluids moving in order to flush out all those waste products. If those waste products are not flushed out, they irritate our tissues. And the only way that our body knows how to deal with that is through inflammation. What does the inflammation do? It dilates all the blood vessels so that your body can attempt to get some of that fluid out of there, right? But if you're just sitting around, then the waste products are going to accumulate and you're going to get inflamed. And there you see Pitta. So Vata and Pitta, Scott has made this very convincing case for why Vata and Pitta would go high. Now talk about Kafa. Where does Kafa come in on all this? Why is the end result of this weight gain?
Well, part of it is going to be that when you're inflamed, your body naturally draws fluids to areas of inflammation. And so, but it isn't the kind of fluid like you were just talking about where it's actually metabolic processing and a kind of natural flushing kind of process. It actually is edema. It's areas where the fluids will pool around an area that's inflamed, but it doesn't actually necessarily resolve it until they start to actually flush the area of those byproducts. And so the Kafa will come in at the physical level to the degree somewhat like that, and then simultaneously from a digestive perspective, depending on what kind of food you're eating and how well you're digesting it, the sitting still process does not actually help you you don't actually burn through the calories you're actually consuming. You're not actually needing a lot of the of the calories you're getting sometimes, and you're actually eating to ground and balance your nervous tension. You're grounding yourself because you're stressed out. And there's also a bunch of research about people having a propensity towards wanting fatty, sugary things when they're stressed out because it's temporarily soothing and temporarily grounding and centering. But then the byproduct of that, from a digestive perspective, is that we often make, if there's most importantly excess sugars or carbohydrate coming into the system, we will make fat out of that. And so it's in the form of triglyceride and some other things that actually makes up a lot of what people recognize as adipose tissue, fat tissue that and the way I work with my patients is not so much like what's your ideal weight, but what's your ideal feeling weight. Like when do you feel your best? And so it's the Kafa registers on the body in a kind of way that where the body starts to feel heavy, feel stuck, feel and I mean stuck in a heavy way. Feel kind of like you either you feel heavy, but you also don't feel like moving. It's actually inhibitory to movement. So it's like it binds you up in a little bit of a cast of sorts. It kind of surrounds you in a way where you may not notice it, but you have these signals coming from that kind of metabolic byproduct that actually inhibit its resolution. That's the really difficult part of it. Is it actually it's like a negative feedback loop that feeds itself. And so the person, and this is another reason why in Ayurvedic theory we understand that the three doshas have profound psychological impacts. Because once you have the Kafa accumulating, it actually starts to promote a frame of mind that reinforces that state. And that's where it's very useful to make sure that the environment you're working in is an environment where it's a healthy environment, either because everybody working together is trying to help each other to stay healthy in an environment, or if you're working at home and you're in the sedentary position a lot, you got to rig that up, or somehow you're cueing yourself to take breaks, and you have to really create boundaries, and that's a challenge for a lot of people.
Setting those alarms on the phone. the every 2-hour or even 1-hour alarm on the phone to get up and do a stretch or yoga pose. You know, such a great way to stay in touch with your body through the workday.
Well, and that's one of the things is like, so the desk yogi, we've built in that where you can say, ping me every so many minutes. And in the research that I've done, the thing that I've found is that the rhythms for engagement and disengagement for, you know, full, vital, active, inspired work, and then full, vital, active, disengaged, fun, rejuvenative, playful break time ranges from about 30 to 70 minutes, depending on the person. A typical person will have a rhythm that is very individual, and it's usually somewhere in that range where at the outside someone's got about 70 minutes of focus in them, and on the more limited side they've got about 30 minutes. But the fact is, it only takes you 2 or 3 minutes to move around and remedy all this stuff at some level, or take some deep breaths to calm down and use the breathing mechanism to also move the fluids and restore the balance of the doshas in the system.
Yeah, I imagine there could be an alarm for taking a deep breath as well as an alarm for getting out of your chair. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, as we're going through this conversation, I'm reminded of a weight loss retreat that we gave some years back, and every person who showed up to the retreat had a stressful corporate job. There were no couch potatoes, and that stereotype. I mean, when is that stereotype going to die? It's not couch potatoes that are the ones that are gaining weight in our society. It's the folks with stressful work that need the most healing. And you know, these negative feedback loops really get you. You know, when you get that edema, it doesn't improve your circulation to have an edema, right? After work, the edema is still there because the inflammation is still there. And who feels like exercising with an extra 20 pounds of water weight in their body, or 10 pounds of water weight, whatever it is? It makes a person feel sluggish, puts strain on the heart, high blood pressure. You as you said it before, it's the new smoking, and that's such a great quote that I learned today from Scott is that it's the, you know, having what was it exactly here? The sitting is the new smoking. Yeah, nice. Such a great one. I love it. So what kind of food should people eat? What kind of food should they eat? Well, we can maybe even address this from a few points of view. One, to keep their lymphatic system flowing. Or two, to maximize productivity while minimizing stress. You know, how should people be eating?
Yeah, and I think that last question that's the critical one, and that's what I've found through, you know, my years of clinical practice, is that it's often not the what, it's the how. You know, because especially in California, I live in the Bay Area, and it's sort of like, you know, the Athens of America in terms of like, it's like the spiritual Hollywood is in Marin. You know, there's all these spiritual teachers that live in a very small area, and then everybody's hip to health and yoga. You know, it's very California. It is very California, but at the same time, the hidden thing is that under stress, when the mind is being deranged by stress and the motivation is being influenced by stress, people often are, you know, having foods that are ostensibly healthy foods, and they're prepared well and all the things that you would kind of hope for, but they're not consuming them. It's not consuming them in a way that's actually conducive to digesting them. So number one would be they multitask while they eat. They try to have a working lunch. You know, that's so common. And it's the one big meal that you have during your workday usually is that midday break. And especially, like you said, people with very high pressure, high responsibility jobs often just don't feel like they have the space to take the time. And so I think Ayurveda has so much to offer people in the sense of really emphasizing and bringing home the simplicity of the context in which you set yourself to eat. So if you only have, what I do with a lot of people that are in this boat, you know, they're busy people who are are struggling with either weight or digestive issues, and they know that work is contributing to it, one of the things I'll have them do is I'll say, okay, fine. I tell them, look, it's illegal for you to work through your lunch. So if you're your own boss, you sue yourself, or if you're not, then you get a class action law. I joke with them about saying this is illegal. There should be a revolution. This is slave labor for you. You have to work through your meals. And if you're doing it to yourself, then who's the slave and who's the master? Yeah. And so simultaneously, though, I'll say, okay, let's bargain. Like, how much time could you really give to a devoted, eating situation? And to tell you the truth, a lot of people will say, okay, if I get to tell you how much I can really do, they'll say 15 to 20 minutes I could dedicate. Okay. Yeah. And doctoring, as you know, is a lot like being MacGyver. This person comes to you and give you whatever you give you. Okay, we're going to make somehow this into something that will maybe be beneficial. So I'll say, okay, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the first 5 minutes of that break, and I want you to do some mindful breathing and relax yourself. Get in touch with your biorhythms, because there's Ayurvedic ways to say this, which is to say, if you balance your nervous system, you balance Vata dosha, it enkindles your digestive fire. And the fact is, the rest and digest nervous system is called so because you need to be in a relaxed state to even digest. If you're in a stress state, your body believes there's not enough time to digest at that moment, and what you'll end up doing is digesting the sugars and the carbohydrates to fuel the stress response, and you won't digest properly the fats and proteins that are really going to be your anchor and your grounding and your deep resources for good energy, good even mental, emotional state, through your workday. So that's number one, is to get relaxed first. And then I'll often have them then drink about 4 to 6 ounces of water, because the digestive fire in the body is actually, it needs to have a hydrated stomach to produce the acids that digest the food in the amount that is really optimal. So that's number two. Then start with actually taking in some water, and then, or even better, have soup, a hearty soup for lunch where the water is included. It's all in one place. So I'll actually coach people to, for their lunches at least 3 days a week or 2 days a week during the work week, to cook at home and then bring it in the morning. So if they make a soup, they'll reheat it in the morning, so they've got it ready. And there's all these wonderful, thermos things now that they can bring it, and it'll still be hot when they get to it a few hours later. So there's no time lost in prep or going somewhere to order something and all that. And so again, like this MacGyver kind of scenario is 20 minutes. I'm going to relax you for 5, have you drink a little water, and then I want you to basically give 12 to 15 minutes of dedicated attention to just chewing, relaxing, spacing out, thinking about your life outside of work, like intentionally disconnecting from the work environment, because, and this is also a very Ayurvedic understanding that jives with modern research in biological research or neurobiological research, is that if you're sitting there fixating and obsessing about work, you're trying to digest 2 things at once. You're trying to digest all this work stuff, or you're trying to digest some food. And so, a lot of times playing music that you like, or something, or getting outdoors where there's some fresh air and the sounds of birds, or something going on that takes your senses in a direction away from whatever your work environment is, it actually infuses space for you to digest better. Because, and if anybody's ever made an actual fire, you know that you may have the best seasoned wood in the world, but unless that stuff is stacked the right way and you have the right space between the wood, it won't burn properly. So the way that you actually create the space for simply eating, which includes spacing out. Like, I highly recommend that people just sit there and let their mind just go wherever it wants other than work. And it's nice to think about your family and think about your friend and whatever, the movie you saw last weekend.
Yeah. Does everybody hear the richness in what Scott is offering here? This is not just a superficial discussion here on how to be healthy in the workday. But it's just very clear the depth and comprehensive level that Scott is taking to approach this topic, and that's what that's what helps people. That's what helps people is having such a great resource like this program that you're offering to people. That addresses this on so many levels. I mean, he just spoke for 20 minutes on how to have a 20-minute meal, right? And gave us really concrete ideas just for that particular moment. And I imagine, Scott, that if we kept going here, asking lots more questions about this, that we could. That's in today's talk. We just got to the tip of the iceberg. That you just have so much more to offer your clients on that. Before we end for today, I want to ask a question of you, which is perhaps a little bit off topic, but it's a question that I like to ask everyone. Maybe it's a personal interest of mine, but I think everyone who's listening will enjoy it as well. What's your favorite food, Scott? And tell us why. Tell us about your relationship with what is your favorite food and what is your relationship with that food?
Well, I think right now in the wintertime, I always end up with kind of I'm having what would it be? It would be like a vegetable manse or a veggie manse with yams.
Veggie manse? What's a manse?
Like a romance. I'm in love with yams.
Oh, a veggie manse, veggie romance. Okay.
Yeah, for me, I'm Vata Pitta, and I find that for me, a yam. I have a twin, and my brother was over the other day, and I bake them, and I'll bake them, and then
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Bake them, and then let's wait for this because it's actually my clinic line it rings on the computer too.
Okay, all right, we'll just wait.
So I'll just start over. I'll say, so my current favorite food is probably yams. Mm-hmm. And it goes to the last question because it's a great, actually, food that it facilitates lymphatic circulation. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all the roots do. The bitter ones are even better. So I would say that a close second, which isn't really a food, but it's something that I'm dearly in love with, is turmeric, of course. And so I, in the wintertime especially, love root vegetables because the kind of carbohydrate that they provide is so easy to digest. It's really malleable to lots of different flavor. You can use the spicing with it in lots of different ways. And so I love that about it. My kids love it. It's like a great side dish, to any meal, including breakfast. And so, that's kind of, I would say, and yams are sort of, they're feminine in the sense that they encourage ojas and they encourage kind of deep juice in the system and deep, healing and integration in the system. And again, that might be an overstatement to some people, but I believe it, and it makes me feel better and happier while I'm eating it. And I know being happy and joyful while I'm eating it is probably really the magic.
Yeah, actually. So you're kind of leading into my next question is describe your experience of eating a yam, right? Like, because you've told us about the benefits of it, but it's the physical or sensual experience that gives people that ultimate relationship with it. You said that it makes you feel joyful. You've also said that it helps you feel maybe a juiciness or more integrated. Maybe you can just, talk just for a moment. What's it like to eat a yam?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah, I ate one yesterday morning, and I bake them. I like them less baked because they caramelize. So there's always this sense of wonder as I'm opening it to see that it's actually created this kind of caramel. It's like this brown, kind of slightly sweet, sticky juice that's with the potato. It's so amazing. Or the sweet potato. So just the smell of that caramel smell is the first thing that greets me, and I'm always just blown away that it can bake its own caramel. And then as I take a bite, I always notice a note of like a sour flavor in it too. There's like a sweet sour balance with the caramel. That's like, it's kind of like, you know, when at holidays, my mother-in-law always likes to put a little bit of orange zest in the sweet potatoes. And so that citrusy kind of note always works well with it, but the yam in and of itself already has a little bit of a sour note. And so it has this very earthy, but to me, subtle and refreshing flavor because of the way that the sweet and the mildly sour kind of quality mix. And I think if you overdo it with the butter and a lot of other spices, you don't get that. So when you have them plain, and I'm not saying you have to have them plain, but if you have them plain, you may notice that little note of sour, which to me is always another just heavenly gift. Like this thing, you know, it's as good as any fruit to me. In the same way that sour and sweet go together in fruit so beautifully. So many really delicious fruits have that balance. And then when it hits my stomach, it's just so nourishing and warm. I always feel like it's soft and soothing to my stomach, but it immediately starts to give me a sense of strength, a sense of a kind of grounded vitality. And then they're just so easy to digest. You know, I just never have any problem digesting a yam. And they also seem to help other foods digest. I like it when I put them in with other combinations of food. They seem to be like a peacemaker in the belly when I'm having other foods, a more complex meal. So, you know, to speak to your website, it makes my belly joyful. That's really the thing.
Great, very convincing and persuasive. I mean, yes, I have not contemplated the wonders of yam as before in my life to this level. So I feel enlightened and blessed by the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me that. I've never been asked that, and that really was fun because I do. Even when I was in Chinese medical school, I got into this whole thing of what we called food mysticism, which is you actually make a relationship as if the food is another being, and there's like in this whole gratitude that I'm about to eat you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're so amazing. And I was living with my schoolmates, and we got really silly with it. So it's actually a very old thing for me to like get silly about how much I love food while I'm in the process of eating it. And now I do it more internally, and I haven't actually talked about it in a long time.
Yeah, this isn't, this idea of food mysticism is not just for practitioners, folks. It's, when you cultivate that sort of mystical relationship with food, you become open to the relationship your body has with food. And so this is a technique. This is a technique for you to appreciate the food on another level. I mean, you can hear that it's not just that Scott is waxing poetic about this yam or talking about a personal relationship. He said a lot of things that really make sense about the sweet potato. And where do we get that information from? We get it from experience, right? And so because Scott is open enough to the food, to having a bit of food mysticism, because he's open to the poetry of food, he has discovered the essence of the food. And every poet knows this, that what is poetry really about? It's about getting down to essence. And so by expressing food poetry, Scott has declared and discovered for us the essence of yam. Once again, Scott, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
You too.
And great opportunity for all of our Joyful Belly listeners to hear from you as well. Make sure, everybody, that you check out Scott's website, drblossom.com. Check out his new program. And once again, Scott, just thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's such a pleasure talking to you too, John.
All right, take care. And I hope we get to see one another in the flesh soon when you come to Asheville in just a few months.
Yeah, good. Yeah, let's stay in touch. Thank you.
All right, let's do it. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.